So we start our story with two people. First, the man whose music we've grown up listening to in Ocean's 11 movies, son, Frank Sinatra Jr.
Junior, the baby.
Born January 10th, 1944.
It was almost 100 years ago.
Oh my God, since the last story, it's been 11
10
years.
That's how long it takes Greg to tell a story. Even though he talks at rapid pace because his heart is always flooping or whatever.
But it's blooping.
Blooping,
Greg.
idiot.
Did you even go to pre-med? Did you go to pre-med?
Did you remember pre-med today?
You tell the story so fast that it's like Superman going around the world and suddenly it's 1944. Hitler's thriving. So January 10th, 1944, the son of Nancy Barbato and that Frank Sinatra, born into greatness and unimaginable wealth, he decided when he became an adult, I'm going to try singing the exact same type of music my dad did.
That's going to go perfect for me and Jacob Dylan.
They should have like a traveling Wilburys, but it's all this. It's Sean Lennon, Julian Lennon, Frank Sinatra Jr., Jacob Dylan, and let's just say the guy from ELO's son. Why not?
One of the Beatles kids is probably doing
Danny
it too.
Harrison.
Oh, I forgot about the Julians too. Sorry, the Lennons. Sorry.
I already said that the Lennons were the first.
No, I'm telling you, I called for a Beatles son. I forgot that you picked two.
You did. Well, it's because you've never recognized John as one of them, and that's why you shot him. And also the guy from Imagine Dragons, just because he might as well be.
Yep. What else is he doing?
So that's the traveling Wilburys. Also, his sister, you might know Frank Sinatra Jr., you know his sister Nancy Sinatra, singer of These Boots Are Made for Walking.
They are made for walking. They're nothing else are boots made for. Literally just that.
So the second main character here is a man named Barry Worthington Keenan. He was a little older than little Frankie Jr., being born in 1940. And while maybe not being born into greatness, he was still born into pretty great wealth.
Okay.
That's why he went to University High School in Brentwood, along with the kids of many celebrities that we'll get into soon. But one of those was Nancy Sinatra.
Okay.
Keenan made his own name for himself when he graduated from UCLA and became the youngest member of the Los Angeles Stock Exchange at age 21.
Weird.
And soon was making a living doing everyone's favorite line of work in LA, real estate development.
Oh, what a young career path that is.
We all had our phase when we did real estate development. And our parents kept saying, no, please go into writing.
Yeah. Don't you want to be a muralist? Don't you want to work in glass art? Listen, son, you need something to fall back on. And I think real estate's a fallback plan.
And I think doing the voice of SpongeBob is something you should really consider.
Have you tried improv?
Gary Keane is going to die. Is that his name? Gary Keane? I'm thinking of Barry Keenan. What's the guy whose name who did SpongeBob?
Oh, Tom Kenny. Tom
right.
Kenny. Jesus Christ! My brain almost flooped.
Blooped. Greg. My God, you didn't go study your pre-med, okay? Speaking of the love month, you ever had pre-med?
You ever fapped to a pre-med?
Bloop. So Keenan was on the fast track in life, and he did it his way. That was until
he did it his dad's way.
He did it his way, Junior. I still do it my way. I do it my dad's way. So that was until 1961. He was driving through Westwood.
As long as Kennedy stays alive forever, I'm going to be doing A-okay. No,
sometimes we make jokes on this show that then come true. So put a pin in that. So he was driving through Westwood. Nobody laugh at that just yet. He was driving through Westwood with his fiance when a dog ran, and that dog, John F. Kennedy, he ran.
And what a dog.
This dog ran into the street in front of his car. So he swerves to avoid it and loses control of the car, sideswipes a bunch of parked cars, and then slams into a wall. He injured his back so badly that it left him in chronic pain for the rest of his life, so severe that he got addicted to painkillers and tranquilizers, and the addiction became so bad that it drove him into bankruptcy.
Okay.
So this is Barry Keenan. Meanwhile...
It'd be like that.
Only in Westwood.
Only in Westwood, yeah.
Another Westwood story. Meanwhile, his dad had also lost a ton of money at the same time. And his parents were divorced, but his mom then attempted to take her own life because of all these issues. So the entire family was at rock bottom.
Yeah.
But rock bottom can always get rocker.
Rock bottom has a basement.
You want a rock? Bottom.
Bottom.
How rock bottom is rock bottom?
Rock
bottom. So Keenan saw the solution to all of these problems, and it was simple. Money.
Get it.
Have some.
Yeah.
If he had money, again, he could solve not only his own problems, but his parents' problems as well, as money does. It solves all the problems, especially mental health problems. Money. So
the pursuit of it, which is genuine and good.
Which is in the Constitution.
Yeah.
And it's also what I want. Da-na-na-na-na. Frank Sinatra said that. So don't pay attention to the fact that he had a serious addiction problem and was later diagnosed as having schizophrenia. No. Money's the answer.
Yeah.
But how was he going?
Why take medication when I can get money?
Why take medication when I can roll these $100 bills into pill size and swallow them? So
money is the medication America takes. Go ahead. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
We don't have healthcare. We have money.
We have money.
And everyone has a lot of it. But how was he going to get enough money to solve problems this big? The answer came to him through his car radio. And you might be inclined to think, oh, Daniel was making a funny joke. He heard a Frank Sinatra song and thought, bingo. No, he heard the voice of God on the radio. Again, this guy had schizophrenia, undiagnosed schizophrenia. He heard the voice of God on the radio, and God told him he needs to kidnap the child of a famous person and hold them for ransom. This is what God told him. I think that was part of Casey Kasem's show.
To Charles Lindbergh's house.
Again.
He's dead.
Nobody suspected it twice. Even the baby's dead.
Yeah, I kidnapped the ladder this time.
I took his plane.
Yeah.
I'm going to kidnap Amelia Earhart's baby.
Oh no.
She got kidnapped by the Bermuda Triangle. So he wasn't going to hurt anybody. He was simply going to take the ransom money, invest it. Then once he made the money back, he's going to repay whatever celebrity whose child he abducted when he was back on his feet.
It's a victimless crime.
So it was a simple plan. The only question left was, who should he kidnap? Like I said, Keenan went to Nepo Baby High, so he was aware of the children of a lot of famous people and also people who would go on to be famous. He went to school with Ryan O'Neal and James Brolin.
Wow.
His best friend was our old subject of a Ellie Meekley episode, Dean Torrance of Jan and Dean, or Dan and Jean. We're not really sure still. So that was his best friend. He's weirdly, this was not the one who got into the car crash at the Beverly Hills, or again, Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
So this guy had two close friends who got in horrific car crashes. Jeez. Suspicious.
If he waited around, he could have taken Josh Brolin. Go ahead. Or Tatum O'Neal. You could, either one of those are worth money. Ask me.
Just hang around that high school for another 40 years.
Yeah.
So he thought maybe Bob Hope's son would be the right target here. But with all the USO stuff that Bob Hope did, he felt it was un-American to kidnap Bob Hope's son. So he felt no.
That's a war crime.
He thought maybe Bing Crosby's son, who I assume is named Bong, but that didn't feel right either. But then it dawned on him. His old pal, Nancy Sinatra. But not her, because she was a woman. And also they kind of knew each other, so that couldn't work.
Yep.
He was very chivalrous. He would never kidnap a woman.
This guy already is an upstanding character.
He had been to the Sinatra house a few times in high school, and because they were, kind of friends. And he had actually met Big Frank a few times, which he insisted he called him.
Yeah.
It would have to be her little brother, Frank Jr.
Junior the baby.
On top of that, he had noticed that while Frank Sr. was very loving and doting on Nancy, he was kind of distant to his son. Mm-hmm. So in Keenan's mind, not only would this get him the money he needed to fix his and his parents' lives, this experience would be so harrowing to the Sinatras that it would bring them closer together and fix all their problems.
They're going to thank me.
It was basically a crime to not kidnap Frank Sinatra Jr.
This is very Homer Simpson logic.
It's Homer Simpson addicted to horse tranquilizers. Besides, Frank Sinatra was tough. This was his justification. He was tough and always got everything he wanted, so he'd be able to handle the brief emotional torment of having his son kidnapped.
It's just brief torment.
If he just gives me the money, I won't chop his head off.
It's just a window into hell. You don't jump through the window. It's just a window. You look through it.
It's a peephole to hell.
It's a peephole to hell.
So his mind was made up. He was going to kidnap Frank Sinatra Jr., ransom his dad, invest the money in the stock market, make millions, and then pay back every cent to the Sinatras.
The stock market, the most sure game in the business. The stock market of the 60s.
We'll get to it later, but the one thing he was always right about was that he could make a lot of money in the stock market.
Pretty funny. The radio told me, put it all on Mr. Pibb. Put it all on John Kennedy's life.
You're going to want to invest in black and white television.
Book depositories.
Put all your money now in Star Wars not being made. But this wasn't going to be some smash and grab kidnapping. Keenan was determined to do this thing right. So he did what all future criminals do. He went to the public library.
And they'll defend you. Those
And he's
librarians
alive.
will defend you tooth and nail for your ability to look up how to kidnap someone.
It's like Quasimodo running into the cathedral. He studied kidnapping cases going all the way back to the Bible. And who was kidnapped? I guess was Joseph? Was he kidnapped and like thrown in a
Maybe
well?
you are your brother's keeper. No, I don't know where he is.
Oh,
Just follow the note.
I'm my brother's kidnapper.
Just follow the tablet.
Who was kidnapped? I'm sure this happened, but who was? What am I asking you? The pagan, pious Buddhist Greg. What does he know about the Bible?
I know the Jews kidnapped dinosaur bones.
Well,
Put
yeah,
them-
that's how we power the lasers. So he was studying all these old kidnapping cases and dissecting what went wrong. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
He read J. Edgar Hoover's writings on crime and criminals, but he realized he couldn't do this alone. He had to get J. Edgar Hoover involved. He had to get the best and brightest in on this. Cue, once again, the Ocean's Whatever music. It's just Frank Sinatra music.
Yeah.
The
I didn't want to say
best
it, but
is
yeah.
yet to come. First, he went to his old high school classmate, Joe Amsler, a former Navyman and current aspiring boxer and abalone diver.
Ooh, I like all. I wish I could have been any three of those things.
Dream. He's a triple threat, aspiring boxer, abalone diver, and kidnapper.
Where are you keeping him? Is he single? Is there a Mrs. Kidnapper?
Is there a Mrs. Abalone? Joe Amsler, he listened to Keenan's plan and felt, this is insane. But he was recently married and needed money, and Keenan was offering him $100 a week to be a part of this plan that in truth, he didn't think was actually going to happen. So he said, yeah, all right,
Okay.
I'll go along with this.
Sure.
Give me the check. But these two early 20s nobodies weren't enough to get the job done. Keenan knew they needed someone who had experience, someone who is intimidating, someone who could sound tough enough on the phone to make even Frank Sinatra listen, somebody who scared him personally.
And that was Sammy Davis Jr. Now go ahead.
Jerry Lewis.
Johnny Cash.
Frank Sinatra's mortal enemy. So he went to John Irwin, his mom's old boyfriend.
You're kidding.
Irwin was 42 years old, also a Navy vet, but this time from World War II. And just like Amsler, he needed the $100 a week Keenan was offering. And just like Amsler, felt the plan was insane and was never actually going to happen, but he needed that money.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is the $100 payment coming from the kidnapping money?
This is upfront money, but
That's not investment money.
I will get to where this money is coming from
Okay.
right after this.
Reference commercial from God.
You ever had bloops on your heart? Hi, I'm God. I'm giving you a heart attack.
Did you find out too late that your boots weren't for walking? We're putting a class action lawsuit together.
That's Nancy Sinatra. Have you ever walked like an Egyptian and it destroyed your ankles?
And a protest group said that their costume isn't a culture. No, you can sue them now.
So now the team was set, but Keenan, and now we're back. Keenan needed money to get his money-making scheme in motion, so he went to his best friend, who was positively rolling in cash at the time, Dean. Of Jan and Dean, or Dan and Jean. As we recall, Jan and Dean were at the height of their fame in the early 60s, but Dean was still insisting on getting his degree at USC. So when Keenan called him with a business proposition, he agreed to meet him at the statue of Tommy the Trojan on the USC campus between classes, as he's like shoveling a egg salad sandwich in his mouth. Like, you want to kidnap who? Huh?
Yeah, what? Huh?
So Keenan brought with him a literal binder that outlined his plan. Like he came prepared, like asking, like on Shark Tank. Hi, Sharks. Hi, Jan or Dean, whichever one you are. So, Frank Sinatra.
We all love My Way. We all love Strangers in the Night.
And Mr. Wonderful's there like,
Yeah.
okay.
Picture this. Old Blue Eyes Jr.
Picture this, the junior chairman of the board. So Keenan brought with him a binder that outlined his plan to, again, kidnap Frank Sinatra Jr. and hold him ransom, invest the money, make millions, and then pay the ransom seed money back to American singing legend Frank Sinatra. He even had a plan for if Sinatra refused to be repaid the ransom money, he would donate it to the charity of Sinatra's choice.
That's cute.
That's what he was going to do. So
I wonder if to kind of like give it a mood, like an ambiance.
he gave him a little shot of Jack Daniels.
Yeah. When you get to page 3, you're going to want to take that shot.
Imagine you're at the Golden Nugget right now. So at the end of his pitch, he asked Dean for $5,000.
Okay.
Dean had listened to the whole thing calmly and saw, My friend has lost his mind. He knew he had fallen on hard times, but he assumed that this was some weird fantasy of his that he would never follow through with. And it was all just some elaborate way of his friend asking for money without having to say, hey, times are tough. I need some money.
Yeah.
So he thought this was all just a ruse, which is why, being his friend, and again, because he did not believe this was going to happen, he gave Keenan $500 to help him get his life back together.
Very generous.
And with that $500, he set about doing exactly what nobody thought he'd actually do: kidnapping Frank Sinatra Jr.
My dad bought a record of Surf City, and that's what the money was used for.
So if you've ever listened to the little old lady from Pasadena, you're complicit. The little old lady from Pasadena is making an appearance later. So back to the Sinatra side of the story. The year was 1963. That's when this is happening. And Sinatra Jr. is 19 years old and was just starting his career, his stellar career as a singer.
We all know it. We all know the timeline of Frank Sinatra Jr.'s career.
Oh, you remember the first place you were when you heard his hit song, My Daddy is Frank Sinatra, club remix?
St. Strangers in the Night Jr.
So, Nepo Baby to the max, his dad had gotten him with the fake legacy version of the Tommy Dorsey band that was going around, and he was performing the gig every young crooner dreams of, the Arizona State Fair in Phoenix.
By the way, may I just mention
that you know Tommy Dorsey personally?
I don't want to brag. We should kidnap Tommy Dorsey Jr. Playing Tommy Dorsey big band in 1963, it's not going to go well.
It's none of this for a 19, not even just like
a 19-year-old
when the Beatles are about to come to America.
They're about to blow the world up. And then soon followed by Bob Dylan and the entire hippie freak out psychedelic movement. And you're like, what's Tommy Dorsey up to? Like, you're not going to, this isn't a good plan for you.
Now, I know you all like hearing about Norwegian wood, but have you ever heard of Jeepers Peepers? I know you're all losing your minds on LSD right now.
But I got a little stormy weather of my own going on.
But did you know that even the birds do it? So Keenan, of course, knew the dates of this tour he was on. So he brought Amsler to Phoenix with him, with the intention of grabbing Frank Sinatra Jr. at some point. But they either screwed it up or they chickened out. I read both of them. So it doesn't happen in Phoenix.
Okay.
Luckily, Sinatra Jr. was coming right to their hometown to perform, so they wouldn't even have to travel.
Wow.
He was going to be performing right here at the Ambassador Hotel, and this was it. It wouldn't get any easier for them already being in town. They'd nab him after the show, and that would be that.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing would derail their plan on this. One of the least notable days in U.S. history, November 22nd, 1963.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. At the Ambassador Hotel.
It's so strange, the synchronicity of what
there's like cosmic failure in this story.
That's why it's so funny. It's like the whole universe was trying to protect Frank Sinatra Jr. So if you haven't caught on, November 22nd,
he still got kidnapped.
November 22nd, 1963, in the funniest way imaginable, by the way. So November 22nd, 1963, if you haven't caught on, John F. Kennedy was shot that day. Not only was the show canceled, but Keenan and everyone else in the country was so rattled that he called off any plans for kidnapping Frank Sinatra Jr. But just because the president was killed doesn't mean everyone's money problems are over.
Yeah. And it's not like everyone got a check in the mail because the president was shot in the head by a Secret Service agent.
2 $400 checks spread out over 8 months. This will get you through the
COVID.
Kennedy the Kennedy COVID assassination.
The Kennedy flu, which is when your brains blow out of your head.
That's what you get in Dallas. There's this new disease coming out of Dealey Plaza. So
it's not the twist.
So after a few days, Keenan started to feel like, I still need the money.
Yeah.
He needed to get his plan going again. And now there was a ticking clock because Frank Sinatra Jr. was about to take his tour to Europe. And there was only one stop left in America before he went away.
Okay.
Lake Tahoe.
Oh, boy.
But to do this, he needed more money. So it was back to Dean, who reluctantly gave him another $500.
But he mistakenly went to the Beach Boys.
He's talking to Brian Wilson.
I already got Manson on my couch. I can't do another crazy person.
But yeah, meanwhile, Brian Wilson is pouring money into redeveloping Spawn Ranch.
I got the sandbox in my living room to deal with.
So he gave him another $500 to do this. But meanwhile, Amsler and Irwin were under the impression that the plan was off and weren't really interested in restarting it.
Yeah.
Irwin he was able to convince, as he later claimed in court. He said he wanted to do it just to make sure Keenan didn't do anything stupid. He wanted to keep an eye on because he still felt fatherly affection for when he was banging around with his mom. But Amsler, it's the love month, I can say that. But Amsler was tougher to crack. So Keenan tricked Amsler to go up with him to Tahoe by telling him there's a lot of construction jobs up there that we can make some money on.
Constructing kidnapping pods.
Constructing this gun in my pocket. So Amsler said, fine, let's go. But when they got there, he saw big letters on the marquee of the Harrah's Club Lodge, Frank Sinatra Jr. And he was like, oh God.
God damn it.
Why did I fall for this one?
B-word.
But after giving him a ton of beer and pills, Keenan somehow managed to convince him to help him again.
The old Courage cocktail.
Beer and a Sinatra special. These guys really had a lot in common. So Keenan started stalking Junior for days. He watched his show. He watched where he went after the show. He Brad Pitt in Ocean 11'd it. Mm-hmm. Then it really became double crunch time because not only was his residency ending in Lake Tahoe, but they ran out of money to pay their hotel bill. So they needed to do this now because they can't even check out of the hotel.
Yeah.
And now was December 8th, 1963. John F. Kennedy had miraculously come back to life.
Guys, I'm okay.
But somehow Jack Ruby also...
Lyndon B. Johnson was feeling a little itchy that day.
And so began one of the most ridiculous comedy of errors I've ever read about. December 8th, 1963, 9:30 p.m. Keenan and Amsler park their Chevy behind the levee, behind the hotel attached to Harrah's that Junior was staying at. They walk up the back stairs towards his room, both armed. They both have guns.
Yeah.
Keenan's gun had one bullet. Amsler's had no bullets in it. So Keenan was also holding a box of pine cones. That was his prop to make them think he's just delivering something. A bunch of pine cones.
Because I'm a 4-year-old kid who was left in the park too long.
These are going to be worth something someday.
See how big this one is?
Yeah, this is really valuable on the playground.
You're going to want to put this in a bag.
So all the way up to the room, Amsler's trying to talk Keenan out of doing this, but he won't hear it. So now is the moment of truth, and Keenan pulled the trigger, but not literally.
No.
He knocked on the door of the hotel room, and Sinatra Jr.'s voice said, come in. So he walks inside, and there he is, Frank Sinatra Jr., sitting in his underwear eating chicken with his trumpet player, John Foss.
Oh.
So the underwear he kind of expected. He did not expect another person to be in the room.
What
Least
about
of
the
all,
chicken?
John Foss. Yeah. I thought he was going to be eating salmon. I didn't prepare for this.
We got to bail. He's got a chicken. We got to bail.
I would have brought rocks that are shaped like hearts if I had known this. So standing there, Keenan said, I've got a delivery. And Junior said, put it there. Not once saying, hey, I didn't order a box of pine cones. So he just says, yeah, put it there.
Hey, I'm not a bear. Wait a minute. Something's fishy about this.
And it's not salmon, I mean. So when Keenan puts down the box, he then turns around, pulls out his gun, which gets stuck on his jacket.
Oh, my God.
So he's like fiddling it, and then he gets it out. So he struggles to get it free. He points it at the two guys eating chicken. And he says, don't make any noise and nobody will get hurt. At this point, Junior and Foss were under the impression that this is a robbery, and Keenan played into that. So he said, give me your wallets. Junior had $20. Foss had nothing. This was when Amsler walks into the room, and Keenan told him to grab their money, but Amsler was frozen in shock that this was actually happening. So then Keenan points the gun at him to be like, move. And then he remembers, wait. So he does one of those like,
oh my God.
So he's shifting who he's pointing the gun at. And then they were supposed to be calling each other by the names of former presidents.
God.
And Amsler immediately comes in and is like, Barry, what's going on?
Oh, my God.
So he immediately...
Barry at 1436 Amstead Drive. Oh, my God.
Well, wait, Barry, I was just trying to remember your social security number.
It's a really funny number, right? It's like 69, 420 or something.
So at this point, they get Junior dressed and blindfold him. They tied up Foss with medical tape, and they grabbed Junior and fled the scene of the crime. And then Keenan remembers, I left the gun in the room.
Oh, my God.
So he goes back in there. Foss has already gotten himself free. And then he figures, well, he's just going to get free if I tape him up again. So he says, don't move for 5 minutes. And then he runs to the car.
Hey, you're forgetting the part where he made him pinky swear. Did you leave it out? Did you do research? You got the pinky swear down?
It was legally binding. So then he runs to the car, and so Foss immediately, the second he leaves, calls the police. And by 9:40, 10 minutes after they were walking into the room, Frank Sinatra Sr. was told by the police his son had been kidnapped. He was in Reno at the time, and he was just
he
not
said, well,
far.
I got to finish the show, then I'll check it. I'll look into it.
The show must go on, baby.
It's not Nancy, is it?
Which Nancy?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, baby. I don't know what Frank Sinatra said.
I kind of like that one, baby. That's Charles Bronson, but whatever. I only know stuff from The Simpsons.
So Frank Sinatra immediately calls Peter Lawford, who was a Kennedy-in-law, who then called Bobby Kennedy, who despite not only
was
his
alive at that time,
who was for a little bit longer was alive, despite not only his brother had just been killed, but also was in a big feud with Frank Sinatra. He got the FBI involved immediately
because of the mob thing. Okay.
I don't know why exactly but they hated. At a certain point, they stopped liking each other.
It was either a wiretapping issue or a mob thing, possibly both.
You can't have one without the other.
Frank Sinatra and Mickey Cohen were friends. I imagine they sound exactly the same in my head.
I don't know if he was friends with L.A. mobsters. Yeah, he didn't go that far.
The guy who was raised in a family in the Valley. You don't think he knew L.A. mobsters? Go ahead.
Oh no, they was not being raised in the Valley. It was in Westwood.
Oh, yeah, you're sorry.
Where Mickey Cohen lived. Brentwood, actually. So Bobby Kennedy got the FBI on it immediately, and 2 headquarters were set up at the hotel he was at in Reno and at Junior's mom's house in Bel Air. Nancy Senior's Nancy Senior's house. So not long after that, Sinatra got a call from Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana, who offered to help him solve this problem, and he begged him, just let the FBI do this. But the mob almost got involved in this.
Imagine these 3 dunces have angered the mob and the FBI.
And Frank Sinatra. Now you're going to have that other guy from the Rat Pack, nobody who remembers his name, on you.
The Shemp of the group.
So before they could even get out of town, a roadblock was put up around Tahoe. Now, at this point, Sinatra Jr. didn't know what was happening. He was still under the impression that this is just a robbery because they kept telling him, you're not being kidnapped. We're just going to take you out of town and then drop you off so nobody's going to come after us.
It's more of like a relocation, like a soft relocation.
You're not a kid, are you? It's not a kidnapping. You're being abducted. So he was going along with everything just so it wouldn't escalate.
Yeah, which is, I imagine, what you're supposed to do.
I would immediately fall in love with my captors if I got kidnapped.
You guys want me to hold the gun or something?
You want me to kidnap you now?
I can count the cash. I'll let that blue thing blow up all over me.
I'll rip my own tooth out. Yeah, I'll take the blue thing for you. But when they saw that there was going to be a police checkpoint up the road, they told Junior to pretend that they were just friends out having fun or else bullets would fly.
Okay.
Junior went along with this again, and even apparently he gave them the idea, put a sleeping mask on my face and give me whiskey and sleeping pills. It was just an excuse for him. Give me whiskey and sleeping pills.
That's how I go to bed every night.
To make it seem like he was hungover.
Okay.
So that's what he was going for. They did this, but then they realized the police are going to be looking for a car with 3 people. So they pulled over and Amsler got out, and the plan was he was going to run into the woods, circle around everything, and then meet them down the road past the checkpoint.
Okay.
So he
Still not a great plan, but okay. It's at least a thought. They had a thought.
Well, wait till you hear how it went. He runs out of the car into the snow and disappears into the woods. Right after this happens, a cop drives by on his way to the checkpoint and stops next to their car. He walked over and said, we're looking for 3 people, but they only saw 2 people in there. To add insult to injury, didn't even recognize Frank Sinatra Jr., but to be fair, he had a sleeping mask on and gave them the all clear to move along, and he drove on up the road. So they were cleared right there. Then after he left, Amsler comes running back to the car, and they're like, what are you doing here? He had run into the woods straight into a fence post and knocked himself out.
I didn't go to Army. I went to the Navy. It's different. They don't have signposts in the water.
Who would have thought this would on land? So he had hobbled back to them hoping they were still there, but they couldn't go to the checkpoint with 3 people, especially because that cop just saw 2 people in the car. So they shoved this dazed man into the trunk of the car and drove up to the checkpoint where they got stopped anyway and were about to be searched before the cop.
They opened the trunk and there's a body in there, but it's not the kidnapped.
That's not Frank Sinatra.
So they close it.
Move along.
Oh my God.
So
we're looking for Frank Sinatra Jr. Here's a photo of Frank Sinatra.
He looks kind of like this, but younger, I guess. So they were about to be searched, but then the cop who had already seen them was like, they're okay. They're already cleared. So they got passed through the checkpoint. So down the 395, they went all the way back to the safe house. And this is why you told me to do this story. The safe house that Keenan had rented under the name of Frank A. Long in beautiful Canoga Park.
Canoga CP.
At 8143 Mason. They smuggled Junior into the house where Irwin was waiting, and this was where they finally revealed to him, you've been kidnapped, and he flipped out.
Oh my God.
So, meanwhile...
Everything was okay up to that point? You
remember,
dude, you done been kidnapped.
He guzzled a bunch of sleeping pills and whiskey, so he had a great time going back to the best car ride he's ever had. Meanwhile, this had all happened so quickly that Keenan hadn't had the time to remove the evidence from where they were staying in Tahoe, nor had the money to pay his hotel bill.
So they skipped on the bill.
Well, which would have aroused suspicion. So he had to drive back up there and clean everything up and pay. But that, of course, meant one more trip to Dean Torrance.
Oh my God.
Who pieced together, oh God, he actually did it, and now I'm an accomplice.
Oh my God.
But out of pure shock, he gave him another $500, and off Keenan went back to Taco.
I'm
Are
also
you
very
hungry?
hungry.
You want to pause?
I'm also very hungry. Go ahead.
So he went to Lake Tahoe, and for good measure, to avoid suspicion, he also went skiing while he was there before heading back.
I'm sure it was a wonderful trip, and he was super calm.
He had a ton
of fun.
So now over a day has passed, and Frank Sinatra Prime still had no idea what had happened to his son. Part of this was because Junior had refused to give them his dad's number because he was furious.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to help you do anything.
Yeah.
After I helped you get down here. But they managed to figure out the hotel Sinatra Sr. was based in Reno, and Irwin called and told him he had Frank Sinatra Jr. and wanted to speak to Frank Sinatra. They couldn't say much because they knew the call was being monitored by the FBI, or they assumed. So he gave Sinatra the address of a gas station in Reno. This is the cherry on the top of this story. He gave the address of a gas station in Reno whose payphone they had looked up the number of in the library, and given they were staying in where they were staying, I'm assuming they went to the Canoga Park Library to look this up. And so they told Sinatra, be at this place in 15 minutes and you'll be able to talk to your boy. And then he hung up on them. Here's the problem. Everything had been going so smoothly up to this point.
They had gotten away with so much.
They had stumbled, like all of these Nepo babies just stumbling into success somehow. The problem was the gas station they had looked up was actually in Carson City, which was 40 minutes from Sinatra's hotel in Reno. And he said, be there in 15 minutes. So Sinatra starts speeding towards this gas station. 15 minutes go by and the phone rings at this gas station. The guy who works there answers it, and Irwin says, is Frank Sinatra there? And the guy's like, what? And he hangs up. A few minutes later.
Is Steve Martin there?
How about Sammy Davis Jr.? So a few minutes later, Irwin calls again and says, is Frank Sinatra there? And the guy's like, haha, but I'm busy. Stop calling here. A few minutes later, Irwin calls again. He answers the phone. Is Frank Sinatra there? And the guy says, listen, pal, Mr. Sinatra is not in the habit of taking his calls at the Chevron station. And he hangs up. A minute later, a car speeds into the gas station.
Oh.
Frank Sinatra comes charging inside and says to the guy, I'm Frank Sinatra. Have I had any calls? So,
oh no, this isn't a gas station. This is a private residence. I'm sorry, sir. Big fan. No.
I thought Frank Sinatra was the name of a refrigerator brand. I thought it was a canned tobacco or whatever. So then the phone rings again and Sinatra grabs the phone. It's Irwin, of course. Sinatra says, what do you want? Money? And he says, yeah, we want money. Sinatra says, I'll give you $1 million. Irwin says, no, we don't want that. That's okay. We'll tell you how much we need. We'll call back here tomorrow and let you know everything. Then he put Junior on the phone and Senior says, are you okay? And Junior says, yeah, click. That's all that they got to say to each other.
Tell me now, I drove all the way over here. This guy's going to raise the prices tomorrow. Come on.
Make this worth my money.
Yeah.
So the next day they call back at the station and tell Sinatra they want $240,000, which today is about $2.4 million.
Oh.
But if Frank Sinatra's offering you, he refused $1 million. Because again, he was trying to be honorable about this and taking just what he needed. So he figured, I just need $240,000.
Why not 250 now? Round up. Why not 230 if you're being
Greg,
generous?
You don't want to get greedy.
Oh my God.
So the FBI, but you still need enough.
Oh my God.
So the FBI had told Sinatra to agree to any amount. So he did. Their reasoning was that they figured, based on what they knew, that this was done by amateurs. This much they figured. So they were confident that they could trace all the money once they handed it over, arrest the culprits, recover all the money. Sinatra agreed, and Irwin told him to tell an FBI courier that he will be given a series of instructions following a series of payphones south towards Los Angeles of what to do with the money.
Okay.
The courier was to go by the code name Patrick Henry, and he was to call Irwin John Adams. This went through a string of 7 payphones between Carson City and LA, one of which was at a payphone at Camden and Santa Monica and Beverly Hills right by Shake Shack.
Oh, cool. This is almost clever. It sounds like it could be clever. I know that they're going to bung it up, but at this point, this 7 payphones thing and the names, it seems like the one clever part of everything.
They finally got the older guy involved who's like kind of handling the situation. Okay. So some of these calls seem to have been taken by Sinatra himself. It wasn't really clear which ones of these, but finally they were told to make the drop of cash between two parked school buses at a Texaco station on Sepulveda at Kashmir, right by the Veterans Cemetery in the early morning hours of December 11th.
Okay.
So that was the location I wanted to find out, because people kept saying it was in Sepulveda, which is what Van Nuys is now called. And then people were like, it was on Sunset Boulevard.
Weird.
But no, it was on Sepulveda near Sunset Boulevard.
Got it. Okay.
So meanwhile, Sinatra had easily come up with he had that in his pocket, probably $240,000 in cash. And the FBI was busy at work photographing 12,400 bills, all the money, and putting them into a 23-pound package. So in the end, it was actually only $239,985 because 3 of the $5 bills got ruined in the microfilm scanning process. But who's counting? Certainly not
who's counting? Not these guys. Money?
Not the D-list criminals that we're dealing with here. So Keenan and Amsler both drove to the drop-off spot and circled around and saw the sack of money between the two buses. So Amsler gets out of the car to get it while Keenan circled around. But Amsler noticed a lot of people around that were clearly undercover FBI agents, and he freaked out and runs away. So then Keenan circles back, and he saw no Amsler, but the money was still there. So he just runs out and grabs it and heads back to Canoga Park.
Okay.
Meanwhile, back in Canoga Park, Irwin was in charge of Junior, but he panicked also and decided to let Junior go, even though he was supposed to wait until they got back with the money. So he shoved him into his car and drove him to what they said was an overpass on the 405, but it seems like it was somewhere maybe kind of near the Skirball, and dropped Junior off and sped away. So this was the prearranged drop point Sinatra had requested, but apparently Junior was so freaked out that they were going to come back and get him. So he hid in the bushes, and eventually Sinatra's car, his dad drives by and can't find him. So eventually he figures it's safe and he gets out and he just starts walking towards his mom's house in Bel Air. And around 3 a.m., some security patrols found him on Roscommare Road, and once it was clear who he was, they took him to Nancy's house, and as if he hadn't already been through enough, they shoved him into the trunk of their car so that the press outside the house wouldn't see him.
God. Weirdly, that was the first time he was shoved in the trunk.
I know. He had gotten such nice treatment up until this point.
They gave him
this is an outrage.
And pills. They let him go early.
Where's my drink?
Yeah.
So when he got inside, he was reunited with his mom and dad in a beautiful reunion where I imagine Frank Sinatra didn't shed a single tear.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
get to work. The lawn needs mowing. You owe me $240,000.
So when Keenan got back to the house, nobody was there. So he correctly sensed something had gone wrong. So he scrubbed the whole place for fingerprints and burned evidence and got out of there. According to him, he was a block ahead of police swarming the house. But I don't know if that's actually true. All they found inside when the police did eventually get to this place was a gun and some fake mustaches. Left over from your kidnapping.
Remind me how they knew the address?
If his version of the story is true, that they did go there right away, I don't really know, unless maybe Sinatra Sr., because Sinatra Jr. was blindfolded most of the time.
Yeah.
But he got a general sense, because he couldn't ID any of the people, but he maybe got a general sense of where he was.
Sure.
If not, there's a definite way coming soon of where they got the address from.
Okay.
So with no way to ID them, they got away with, like they did.
Yeah.
They got away with this. It worked almost according to plan, and they got all the money minus $15, and the Sinatra
until
family...
Jan and Dean put a song out the next summer. No, go ahead. Sorry.
All about this. The summer that I funded a kidnapping, accidentally.
Did make it on the charts.
The Sinatra family was reunited. It all ended up exactly how Keenan had wanted it. Like it worked. Like everything he wanted to happen kind of happened.
You can kind of, with confidence, bulldoze through all of the problems that the world throws at you.
If you are a Nepo, but if you have like the confidence of being born into that sort of money, like you can fail your way to kidnapping Frank Sinatra Jr. successfully. But like they made it work somehow, like so many failure after failure, and it worked. So Keenan met back up with Amsler and Irwin at a friend's house at 10709 Northgate in Culver City. They split the cash. Irwin went down to his brother in San Diego, but Amsler and Irwin stayed there for a little bit and did everything you'd expect two 23-year-olds to do with it. They spread the money out on the floor and danced on it. They had a money war with it. They played football with it. They lit cigarettes with it. Keenan then bought himself a new car, and Amsler bought himself a new motorcycle. motorcycle.
Oh my God.
Keenan used some of it to buy his ex-wife some new furniture. He then tried to repay Dean Torrance what he had borrowed, but he refused it because he wanted no part of this.
It. Yeah.
But now it was the FBI's turn to have some fun on a big pile of money. They started gathering all the evidence that existed and retracing every part of what had happened according to little Frankie, and the walls were closing in, but they still couldn't ID who did this.
Jesus.
Of course, this story was all over the newspapers, maybe on purpose, and reading about what the FBI was doing panicked Irwin down in San Diego at his brother's house. Mm-hmm. His guilt got so bad, he had to tell somebody what he had done. So
he's so guilty for not killing the guy.
Why didn't I go after what Bing Crosby's son? So he told his brother what he had done. His brother then immedately told the police. That day, all three of them were arrested.
Oh my God.
They would have gotten away for it if the old man Irwin hadn't cracked.
Jesus.
So Irwin in his brother's house, they got him while he was sleeping. Amsler was playing chess at a friend's house in Venice. They got him. Keenan was at his girlfriend's place in La Cañada. They got him. The FBI was able to retrieve every single dollar that was in the ransom, except the money Keenan had used to buy his ex-wife new furniture, to which Sinatra Sr. said, "Christ, let her keep the furniture." No! So the trial started on February 10th, 1964, and their defense immediately went with the tactic of arguing that this was not a kidnapping at all. Keenan and the boys had been approached by a team associated with the Sinatras who paid them to do this as a publicity stunt to jumpstart Frank Sinatra's career. This was obviously a lie, but the trial dragged on for 4 weeks. Dean Torrance had to testify in this for his unintentional involvement.
And that's how surf music died. Frank Sinatra beat it to death.
But that's when courtroom music really took off. These 12 men are angry in Pasadena courthouse. So in the end, the verdicts were as such. All three of them, they got this. 5 years for conspiracy to kidnap, 10 years for receiving ransom money, 60 years for 3 counts of interstate telephone call demanding ransom. On top of that, Keenan and Amsler got a life sentence for interstate transportation of a kidnapped person. Dean Torrance somehow escaped without any punishment.
I would be terrified if I was Dean Torrance.
Yep, for many reasons.
Yeah.
They all ended up getting psychiatric evaluations in prison and were deemed mentally insane at the time of the kidnapping and had no criminal malice, so their terms were all reduced to 25 years.
Wow.
Keenan was sent to Lompoc Penitentiary, where he continued drinking and doing drugs. Mm-hmm. There were also a few attempts on his life made in there by people who thought that if they killed him, they'd get in good with Frank Sinatra. So people were trying to kill him in prison. In the end, Irwin and Amsler ended up serving 3.5 years. Keenan was out after 4.5 years.
Wow.
Irwin disappeared after his... That's what I'm saying. Like, these people, all they got was 4 years in prison. Like, they got, like, nothing for this.
After life sentences and at least, like, a 70 count, something like 75 years life.
Plus life. It doesn't make, like, how did they get out of this so scot-free?
They were just so good.
When you're that good of a criminal, they let you do it. So Irwin disappeared after his release. Amsler ended up becoming his old high school friend Ryan O'Neal's stunt double / bodyguard. So like a Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio situation.
If Barry Lyndon falls down, it's actually the guy who kidnapped Frank Sinatra Jr.
Think about that. So he died in 2006. So that's what happened with Amsler. You'll see him in check out your latest Ryan O'Neal movie.
Next time you watch Driver.
So Keenan continued the cycle of high highs and low lows that defined his entire life.
Yeah.
When he got out, his circle of friends raised money for him to get him back on his feet, and his friend who just never seems to know when to quit, Dean Torrance, leased him a new car to help him get going.
God, and told him just take a drive down Dead Man's Curve.
If Westwood doesn't get you, try this street in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, try this street over here.
But when he did get back on his feet, he actually did what he always said he was going to do. He started a building development company called Golden West Properties. He got sober and he became a millionaire.
Wow, really?
He even ended up marrying Laura Bush's childhood friend, so he regularly hung out with George Bush Jr.
The unkidnappable George Bush Jr.
Nobody wanted him.
Yeah.
So he was hanging out with George W. Bush in the 80s.
Relaying the story of the time that he kidnapped Frank Sinatra Jr.
You know, one day I wouldn't mind kidnapping Osama bin Laden. They were sharing stories about who they wanted to kidnap.
You said that someone took an ashtray from your house. I have a similar story.
So he had it all. Like he rose to the top of rich society.
Wow.
And then in 1986, he relapsed and he almost OD'd and he lost $17 million.
Oh my God.
This was when he went into a 12-step program and got clean for good and made himself a millionaire again. So he did it again. In 1988, he actually became, when you have money, money comes to you.
Nepo babies.
He actually became a consultant for the Commerce Casino in 1988.
Okay.
But his passion became opening up treatment centers and psychiatric hospitals and shelters for runaway teens and abused women with children. So he's a morally confusing guy who, over the whole span of his life, who also had serious mental health issues. So later in life, he didn't even see what he had done to Frank Sinatra Jr. as being done by him. Like in his mind, it was a completely different person.
Wow.
It was a sad and actually recent ending for Keenan when in November 2022, he took his own life at the age of 82, seemingly because of a combination of his mental health issues and also the physical pain he was in from that accident. But while maybe this event didn't have much of a lasting impact on Keenan and all of them, it did for the other guy involved, Dean Torrance. No, it did actually kind of hurt Dean Torrance's career, but there's also another guy, Frank Sinatra Jr. was involved here.
Oh, he was involved? As Frank Sinatra Sr. would say.
It's so funny that the story of Frank Sinatra Sr.'s kidnapping or Jr.'s kidnapping, Frank Sinatra Jr. is the least interesting part of the whole story. Like that defines his whole career. So to start, the fake story of him arranging this all, it's a publicity stunt, haunted his reputation forever and kind of became the biggest part of his career. Oof. Like people just were like, oh yeah, the guy who tried to fake his own kidnapping to become successful. His singing career never really took off, but also being kidnapped can't be an easy thing to get over.
No.
In 1999, Columbia Pictures had offered Keenan $1.5 million for the movie rights to the story, but Jr. sued and won to prevent that from ever happening.
Yeah.
With Keenan being somewhat of a bigwig, they would see each other around LA at parties and they would never speak, but they would nod at each other from across the room of just like,
that is insane.
Very weird. But something like this affects the whole family. And even if maybe it wasn't something they enjoyed talking about, it clearly had an effect. This is the proof of this to you, of how traumatic something like this could be. Because this is all fun and games.
Yeah.
Someone got kidnapped. Mm-hmm. Do you know what Frank Sinatra Sr. was buried with?
No.
Sammy Davis Jr.
When he was still alive.
Yeah. Let me out. So he was buried with a bottle of whiskey, cigarettes, a lighter, and 10 dimes. When Irwin kept making calls about the ransom, he was calling only on payphones so that the calls couldn't be traced. Sinatra was worried he wouldn't have enough coins for the calls when they came in, so he started carrying dimes with him, and this fear became a paranoia that followed him for the rest of his life, because from then on, he always kept dimes in his pocket in case this ever happened again.
Oh my God.
So that's why he was buried with 10 dimes, because of this, the trauma of having his son kidnapped.
Jesus Christ.
But if you don't want to take my word on this story, you can always listen to the podcast that came out about it in 2021, hosted by the only logical choice to tell this story, John Stamos.
What?
I don't know why, but John Stamos hosted a podcast about this.
The other Beach Boy?
Yeah, that's
wow.
What a weird thing.
Yeah.
It really is the most interesting part of Frank Sinatra Jr.'s life.
Poor guy.
Yeah, sad
Poor guy.
Story.
The cops could not recognize him to save him. That sucks. That's a bad life.